All right, on this Garlic Marketing Show, we're going to talk about all the problems that are going on with fundraising and marketing for nonprofits and switching over to the donor-driven journey. I've got Greg Warner with imarketsmart.com. Greg, say hi.
Hey.
And we're going to talk about the pit stops hurting charities. We're going to talk about the fundraising climate change that's going on in donors. Things like why galas don't work anymore. Greg's journey and why he got frustrated and how he changed it, and how to build donor-driven journeys that get you 10-to-1 guaranteed nonprofit fundraising investment returns. All this on the Garlic Marketing Show, but of course, it's brought to you by videocasestory.com. One of the best ways to promote any organization is through your stories. Go to videocasestory.com, where we'll help you collect, craft, and deliver those stories. All right, let's get started.
My name is Gino Wickman. I was introduced to Ian, and that's what brought me into this video world and got me embracing this video world. And Ian did exactly what I hoped. He got me really comfortable with putting videos out to the world. And having a great strategy around putting videos out to the world, because there's so much more than just shooting a video. And so the way that he positions those videos, optimizes those videos, he's done a great job.
All right. And Greg, before we get into this, tell me a little bit about your journey of how you got into helping nonprofits, because it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I was running a marketing agency. All I ever wanted to do was own my own marketing agency when I was a kid. And we were helping for-profit companies generate leads, nurture those leads, and land appointments for sales teams. And we got really good at that. We were early on provider of marketing automation technology when it first came out. And I thought that was just terrific. As I started to make more money, I decided to start donating a lot of money. This isn't something my family taught me. We weren't taught to be philanthropic or charitable. But I liked it. I liked the idea of giving money away, and it made me feel good. But the experience left me looking constantly for another charity because the experience wasn't very good. And in spite of that, I kept giving more and more to a specific charity because my wife is an insulin dependent diabetic. And so I gave more and more to that, into the thousands of dollars. And what I found was the experience doesn't get any better. And in many cases, it actually gets worse, because then you become a mark and they sell your name, funny enough, to other charities. I didn't know that at the time. And then you start getting solicitations, crass solicitations from just about anybody. You get on the list. And then they also screen you as an individual through big data to try to understand how much wealth you have. And then I would get like sometimes a 9x12 envelope just asking me for $5,000. Or I remember one that really drove me nuts was I got a newsletter talking about and recommending how to do a charitable gift annuity, which is something that, I mean, if they give me an annuity for my money, at the time I was like in my late 30s, that would be a really bad deal for them.
Yeah.
Called up that charity, that diabetes charity, and I was like, is this stuff working? She's like, no. So what do you really want to happen? She's like, I need meetings with wealthy people where they're ready to talk about giving, and I can help them give smartly. And I was like, okay, that sounds what I do for sales teams. Let me do it for you. I'll do it for free. And it worked so well. We just so totally overwhelmed them. And then we got referred quickly to another diabetes charity and another. And it was a couple of years later, I just realized the software we were using was meant for marketers, not for fundraisers.
Yeah.
So I just started developing our own software and decided to productize this type of marketing and technology for the nonprofit sector.
And I think that's a big difference, because what's the difference between marketing for donors and fundraisers?
Many in the nonprofit space would like to tell you that it's very different. And there are differences, but any exchange of money requires an exchange of value. So what that means is charities need to provide a giving experience that exceeds the value of the amount of money that they give. That's like marketing 101.
Mhm.
The difference is that the part of the brain that lights up when one thinks about their charity or a charity is a different part of the brain that thinks up when making most purchasing decisions.
Ah.
And this is where the rub comes in about the difference between marketing and fundraising. And the difference is the brain that lights up for fundraising and philanthropy is the part of the brain that thinks about family and love. So, in other words, people think of their charities as members of their family. And you even see this at the end of life when they may have estranged children who don't visit them in the old age home. So they remove them from their will and they leave their money to their cat or more likely to their charity. It's because that's who they consider is their family. Does that make
That makes
sense?
complete sense. When did you figure this out? When did you realize this? Because obviously you're a marketing
Well,
agency and now you're like, this is wrong. We're thinking about this the wrong way.
yeah, there's a little more to the story too, because I've always been fascinated as a direct response marketer.
Mm.
I'd always been fascinated with charities and trying to understand what they're doing because everything that they did was counter to what I thought was what worked. Just as a marketer and a lay person who's watching what they're doing, it's just so overly solicitous and demanding and organization centric. Like it's nothing about me, it's all about how great your charity is. So you're demanding that I give to you almost as if you feel I ought to
Mm.
because you do such great work. And what I felt in my heart was like, I want to be I want to be great for having given through your charity to help others, not to your charity because you're such awesome people. And that's the start of the disconnect. But my cousins, interestingly enough, my uncle died fairly young of melanoma cancer, and the family developed this golf outing and gala and foundation in his honor. And we all worked for several years really hard to raise money for melanoma research and care. And I'm going to tell you, every single year it got harder and harder, less people volunteered to help, and we raised less money.
Mm.
One year, I mean, with all the gala, the golf tournament, all the expenses, we netted like 25 grand, which you might say that's a lot of money. I don't know. When you consider 10 different people working their brains out, I was like, wouldn't it be better if we just each gave a couple grand?
Yeah.
Like, let's skip all this and let's just give the money ourselves because our time is worth a lot. And that, I just was like, this is another one, like the direct response stuff seems crass and overly solicitous. This this gala, like fewer and fewer people kept coming and volunteering or attending because we're badgering them throughout the gala for an auction and then the raffles and the this and the that. It's not fun, man. So it goes back to value of the experience.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe the older generations, like this is the way it was done, and they liked hobnobbing at galas or whatever. But I'm Gen X and I don't need that. I just don't need that.
No. So, how have you solved this? How did you change it? What are you doing now to change the donor experience and get them to donate?
Yeah. What we're doing is we're making the experience donor driven. So there used to be a term that I stumbled upon when I first got into this. They call it donor centricity,
Mhm.
donor centric fundraising. And nowadays, there's also another one that's political that's called community centric fundraising. So, those are the two ways that the sector thinks about things. And when I say community centric, that it's fairly unproven, but the idea is that we don't want donors to be too authoritarian and dictatorial. So we got to make sure that this is what they're demanding when they give is good for the community. I'm not sure it's entirely necessary because most organizations have gift acceptance policies and governing features and boards. But the donor centric perspective is one that's necessary because it's very easy for leaders and administrators of charities to lose sight of the donor. Like you won't see many charitable missions that even mention the donor as part of their mission statement. Yet the donor deserves something in return for their money. It should not be an afterthought and treated like they ought to give. So I just twist it a little bit and I like to call it donor driven because it's really what we offer and what we recommend, whether you buy from us or not, is that you allow the donor the opportunity to drive the journey. It's an opt-in, permission-oriented, trust-based, value-oriented way of treating donors and supporters at all levels, whereby you first invite them to engage by offering feedback through a survey.
Mhm.
Once they take that survey, we ask their permission if we can, as part of the survey, if we can communicate with them in a non-solicitous but value-oriented way over time. And most will opt in. And I mean, there's an asterisk there because about tracking because we put a cookie on their browser at that point, and not only we'll not only track what emails they click, but where they go on a website. We basically invite them to self describe why they care, what they care about, and how they might give. And that automates a virtual gift officer, like a fundraiser's assistant
Mhm.
that'll think about these hundreds and thousands or tens of thousands of responses and then provide a value oriented, individualized, highly personalized, and relevant automated communication flow just for them to give them a VIP experience, whether they're a supporter who's never donated or someone who's ultra wealthy. And the emails are never solicitous. They only provide value as much in line with the donor's needs. In other words, resonating and relating to why they care, where they are in the consideration process for giving, and even helping them set up a meeting to talk to a facilitator, especially if they want to give assets. So, this is the system that I developed. We track who's engaging, we help the donors arrange their own appointments at a time that's convenient for them to meet with a facilitator, and the system will prioritize who's really warm or hot based on their engagement, where they're clicking, what they're saying, and so on, so that we're meeting donors where they are rather than cold calling them and trying to wedge the fundraiser into their life when the timing's not right.
That's absolutely critical, right? It's especially nowadays, everyone's so busy, and if you're bothering something for something that maybe they don't wanna do right then, it's marketing 101, right? It's the
Yeah,
situation.
and the thing with philanthropy, it's a highly considered sale. So it's kind of like you're not in the market to buy a house very often,
Yeah.
right? Or take a really big trip. And this is a highly considered decision where you're talking about someone wants to find meaning in their life through giving away their hard-earned cash. It's not like normal, really. People do it when they reach a point in their life where, unless it's transactional and they want to get front row seats at the football game or something, or best parking lot spot at the university, okay, that's cool. But most of what we're talking about is more related to individuals get to a point in their life where they want to realize the best version of themselves. They want to be able to look in the mirror and think of their own autobiographical heroism. Think like Ebenezer Scrooge, right? It wasn't until the angel of death showed him
Mhm.
his grave, and it said that he died, I think, alone and a miser. It's when you wake up at a certain point in your life and realize that you want to be charitable because it's good for you to be charitable and humanity.
Mhm.
And that's a window, and sometimes it goes in and out because like you may find somebody who's in that window but then their mom gets sick, and then you're talking like 2 or 3 years of dealing with mom's issues before they can come back to their own philanthropic journey. And actually, so timing is really critical for this process, and we've got to be ever present in the minds of those supporters, building trust and showing them that we're worthy of their trust for them to enter into the process when it's right for them. This is donor driven fundraising.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense, right? It's because I know there's organizations I'm a part of where it becomes almost like you're saying, it becomes almost offensive, the level of marketing that they're doing and not providing any type of value or showing like it's not that I want something, but I want to understand what's the value for this, right? And what am I doing? And not just, hey, we need money, give me money, or we're a great organization. When you do this, you've been doing this for a while. How does it impact donors? How does it impact the giving? How does it impact the organization?
What you're talking about is, in general, organizations are run by amazing people who are tremendously kind hearted, but they fall into, in many cases, a trap that's not really of their making, but it is their problem. In that, I'll take off the gloves and say I call it road rage administration. So, what I mean by that is like when someone cuts you off, and hopefully you don't do this, but you know what I'm talking about. Someone cuts you off in your car, you say things and make gestures with your hands and such that you do what you would never do if you were just standing in line at the food store and they cut you off.
No, exactly. Hopefully.
So something happens, unfortunately, in these boardrooms and in these charities when people get distanced from the supporters and the donors. They forget what it feels like to be overly solicited and spammed and treated like an ATM machine that is targeted for extraction. And it's I have empathy for the people in the cause because this is the way the systems are set up to operate and have operated for many years. It worked. It worked. Never mind the fact that it did drive a lot of people away, but it also drove in a lot of money till now.
Mm,
So I've been calling the creeping change that's I've been analyzing it through a free tool that I give away to the sector. And I call this fundraising climate change. And it's been the slow disappearance of donors across the board who just throw in the towel and say, you know what, giving to charity is not for me.
mm.
They try it and the experience isn't good. So they churn, they don't retain, and then they opt out pretty much forever. 15 years ago, it was 66% of Americans gave to charity. Now it's under 50%.
Wow.
That's a sharp decline. However, the dollars given to charity have been increasing at about 2% a year, equal to the GDP pretty much. So there's a phrase in the sector where they say donors down, but dollars up. It's fewer people, the wealthy, are giving more, making up for the fact that the donors are disappearing. But all of a sudden now, literally now, 2023, it's pretty much donors down, dollars down. And also, the wealthy are really putting their money first in the ultimate competitor of every charity, which is, well, it's a combo of either the donor advised fund
Mhm.
or the family foundation. And those can be like pit stops for their wealth where they still get the tax write-off, but they don't actually have to distribute. In a foundation, you have to distribute 5%. That's not that much. Donor advised funds, as the law is now, you don't have to really distribute anything. So they're putting these large donations into these pit stops, and that's hurting the charities as well.
Mm.
But again, it's because those tools provide a better value proposition to these donors, these high wealth donors, than the charities do. So until the charities improve the value proposition, especially among the wealthy, not much is going to change. They're just going to see more fundraising climate change. And that's my life mission, is to try and turn that around.
And tell me about some of the success stories. How is this impacting some of the people you've worked with?
There's a variety of ways. There's the monetary way, because first of all, we guarantee 10-to-1 ROI on every implementation, and we've never had to give our money back
Wow.
because it always works. If you're good to donors, it's just so simple. It always works. 10-to-1 is easy, and we guarantee that. And by the way, like if you do a gala, if you get 2-to-1, you're lucky. You do
Wow.
big direct, maybe 2 or 3-to-1, you're very lucky. But we'll guarantee 10-to-1, and we're only focused on the biggest gifts of assets. So it's quite substantial. Our goal is to have every customer at 100-to-1 ROI. We don't promote that because they won't believe it. It's
Yeah.
just 10-to-1 is hard to believe. But what's even more important is the transformation that we see among the organizations, the operations, and the people who get to pivot from transactional and organization centric to relational and donor centric or donor driven. This pivot makes fundraisers happier because they can actually build relationships with these amazing, wealthy human people. And they can help them. I've seen people cry tears of joy for having given away millions of dollars that they worked their asses off to accumulate. You can't give anybody a greater gift than to help them build a legacy in some way and realize the best versions of themselves while helping others. And the fundraiser, when they get the opportunity to work, we have a wonderful lady over at the American Lung Association gave us a great quote when she first got this rolling. She said, people are reaching out to me instead of the other way around. How refreshing is that?
Mm,
So
that's
look,
awesome.
these fundraisers are not exactly paid like JP Morgan bankers,
Yeah.
right? They care about the cause. They work unbelievably hard for not that much money. They're put in awkward positions because sometimes leadership or the board will tell them to go twist some arms and get more money because we need more food or blankets which is noble to a degree. But it makes fundraisers feel really bad if they are extractors instead of partners and collaborators and facilitators. So the outcome is it's good for everybody, but frankly, the board and the leadership need to take a little bit of medicine that they might not think tastes so good going down, because it's not about their hero story, meaning their leadership and working for a great cause and being able to tell themselves they're doing good as the leader, but it's more about being subservient to the donor's hero story just when you're dealing with the donors.
Yeah. No, it makes complete sense. It's just most people aren't thinking that way, which is awesome. And so tell me about the tools you've developed. You've got the fundraising report card. We can go to fundraisingreportcard.com. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, so like I'm a serial entrepreneur who never makes any money. No, that's not true. I do fine, but I keep developing products for the charitable sector. We have the one flagship product that pays the bills, and I keep reinvesting in that. But I come up with all these ideas to solve problems for charities. And in most cases, I give them away because that's part of my philanthropy. I'm not giving as much as I could give away more if I didn't build all these little applications and tools.
Yeah.
But I think it's better if I invest in these and give them away to really multiply my effectiveness. So the fundraising report card is a data visualizer. Most nonprofits don't really understand. It's very similar to SaaS metrics.
Gotcha.
You're looking at churn rates, you're looking at lifetime value, growth rate, things like this. And they just don't have the metrics and the visualizations that they need. Nobody's decided to make it easy for them to see that and share it and analyze it and collaborate about it. So I built it, and we've got thousands and thousands of users, and we'll probably monetize it in 2024. So if anyone's interested in seeing their metrics at a nonprofit, or if you're on the board, and you want to, you better get your data in there soon. We'll probably start charging for it eventually.
All right, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And if someone does want you all to help them with this fundraising effort and donor-driven fundraising, you go to imarketsmart.com.
Yeah, imarketsmart.com. And don't worry, we're not heavy sales oriented. It's very collaborative, very facilitation oriented. If the fit is right, we'll work together. If it isn't, we won't.
All right. And we'll put a link to that in show notes. And all this massive amount of information that you put out, we've got a LinkedIn, you've got YouTube. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. Those are the two best places to follow you.
Yeah. LinkedIn, I got like 20,000 followers now. So that's nice. Join the club. Yeah.
And yeah, we'll put a link to all of that. You're obviously super smart when it comes to doing all this. What's the one last piece of advice you can give to a nonprofit who wants to start implementing this as soon as possible?
I would say think more like an entrepreneur seeking venture capital and maybe even private equity.
Mm.
In other words, look, and I've got this data, thankfully, because people entered it into the fundraising report card and you could see it in the benchmarks page. But, and I haven't looked at it today, but it's pretty much consistent that about 77% of all the people giving to charities across the board, make up only 5% of charitable revenue. 70, but hold on. So 0.7% of the people, meaning less than 1% of the people, make up about 75-80% of all the revenue. So if it's a fraction of 1% of the people that make up the majority of the revenue, and if all those other people make up very few, then what you got to do is be less of a populist type of fundraiser where you're spamming and emailing and direct mailing everybody and making the environment worse and upsetting people and driving them away from charity. But instead, focus a lot more on the wealth and the wealthy. They're not evil, they're good people. They do want to give their money away. They just can't find charities that will provide value that works for them.
Interesting.
And just remember, value is in the eye of the beholder.
Yep.
So that means you got to work at it a little bit. And I get it. It's easier to sign a purchase order to do another gala or to do some more junk mail. But if you want to really create a sustainable organization or institution, you've got to think more about helping deliver value to people who have capacity.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. Also, Greg, this has been fantastic. We're definitely gonna have you on as you're launching more of these pieces and as you're advancing down this donor-driven journey. But I really appreciate you being on the Garlic Marketing Show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I hope folks get something out of this.
It was
Learned a few things.
yeah, it was an amazing amount of information. Is and if you're a nonprofit and you really should be thinking about this in your journey, it's the fastest way. And you think about that 10 to 1 versus 2 to 1 versus 1 to 1. It's the fastest way. It works. It makes sense. Go follow Greg. And if you're interested, go to imarketsmart.com. And thank you all for taking Greg and I on your journey. This has been I Garlic and the Garlic Marketing Show.